My biggest and greatest joy to announce first speaker of this conference, and I want to say that I am going to be myself in first lines as a listener, to learn, to find out something new, to analyze myself, to find out where I am on my own path to the inner healing. First speaker is a wonderful woman. She is a woman of influence in which you can find unique mixture of a professional and expert of her field, but also deep believer person, where you can see that her knowledge is led by the Holy Spirit. It's Viktorija Čerenkova. More than 17 years, she is a private counselor. For more than 10 years, she was working in educational system. She knows how to work with children and was leading the crisis center for a few years. She is a co-founder of the School of Personality Transformation. For many years, she lives in Latvia and abroad. Her author trainings. So first speaker is Viktorija Čerenkova. She's going to share with us with her personal testimony and also the phases of how the loss is experienced.
Now it's Viktorija's turn to speak in the conference about the loss and the phases of loss.
Hello, Veronica. Hello, everyone who's going to listen to us today and who is with us. First of all, Veronica, I'd love to express my gratitude. You know, it's not an easy topic of your first conference. And absolutely, I believe it's coming from the depth of your heart, because it's very hard to talk about this theme. And the fact that you actually are organizing it and how responsible you are, I believe it was born in the heart of God. Thank you for trusting me to open up the conference and to be the first speaker of this conference. I truly believe that I can be of some help for somebody. Yes, I'm going to share as a psychologist with information that I believe will help to someone who is going through the period of loss. And I know that very often when we are drowning in our emotions and feelings, and maybe in our pain, sometimes without knowing what exactly is happening with us and what is happening inside of us, we are getting lost, and it seems that something is wrong with me. And sometimes it's even the thoughts, maybe I'm becoming crazy, maybe I'm all alone in this, in my loss in the world, and there's no one at all next to me. I believe that today the information you will hear will help us to find out, to figure out on which phase of the loss I am today, on which phase my soul actually is, what it is going through. I believe that in the moment when we understand where we are in our own path of living out the loss, why we're there, we are starting to see some exit out of our difficulties, and it's much easier with this understanding. I believe that today somebody will gain this understanding. And as it's written, that the truth will set you free. When we find out the truth, it frees us, it releases us. Maybe somebody will see that I'm actually next to the exit of my way out of the loss. And today I'm going to share also not only as psychologist, but in parallel I will share my own personal experience with my own personal losses. In 3 weeks I'm going to be 40, and I had pretty much losses. And it's somehow together turned out that our ways and paths have crossed, that this last year was a year of losses, and I think every one of us is going through their own personal crisis. in an atmosphere that is everywhere in the world, and when it comes down. And today, many of us, we have lost something, even in the context of what is going on in the world. But when we are inside of this hard atmosphere, I see that inside of us, those emotions are lifted up that we actually, during living our life, were not conscious about. We were not able to define them, and that's why we could not live them out. When crisis started in the world and in our country due to pandemics, it was also my personal crisis, and I actually didn't understand and didn't experience that first wave, because before it started, I've lost a very dear person to me. It was a very fast death. I've lost that person, and actually only 1 month after that first wave and first sign of this pandemic crisis began, then my mom got sick. They diagnosed her in a wrong way, and in a very short period of time, I've lost her too. And actually, it's only 8 months passed after that loss. So I can say that I was through all those phases that I'm going to speak about today. And I can say honestly, when you understand when you are, it's somehow easier. That's why I believe that while I will be sharing this knowledge, maybe for someone it's going to be nothing new, but for somebody it's going to be really something new. I believe it will ease your path. And as I said, what is a loss? I really like the name, the topic of the conference, From Loss to Victory. And Veronica, it's really good that you say that in the beginning we should celebrate our experience. You have tasted at some way this taste of victory after your loss, and I like this name. But let's think, what is a loss? I think that everyone who was reading the name of this conference, and all of us, we had our own understanding what is a loss. It can be death of our relative or a close person. It can be also death of relationships, a divorce, or a painful part. And in the very same way, our soul experiences in a painful way the loss of relationships. It also can be a loss of your health, sickness. The very same emotions actually can be on you. But if we speak about loss, I think it's a loss of ourselves, of our own identity, because when we lose a person, and there is a possibility that we won't get him back anymore. And when relationships are lost, when we are separated from our relatives, we are losing huge part of ourselves, huge part of our own heart. Maybe there won't be relatives anymore with us, and we are, as believers, we know, yes, they are in heaven, in a better place, but at the very same time, it's not so easy to return, to get back that part that was teared away from us, of ourselves. And I think that when we are coping with and we're getting over dealing with the loss, we are actually bringing and finding ourselves and bringing ourselves back. And if this team is put on a silent mode, when we lose a person and when we start to live this loss through, behind this loss, many hard and difficult emotions are hidden. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, and I would even say there's a lot of feeling of guilt, of being oppressed and depressed. And when we meet such kind of difficult emotions, we don't know ourselves how to live them, how to experience them, how to admit that we actually have these feelings. But also it's difficult, it becomes difficult for us to live further with relatives. During a loss, there is some kind of view inside of us that we're separated from all the world, and sometimes in the path where we actually becoming mature and grown up, there is some way in this path when what we actually can live only ourselves with God alone. But sometimes relatives around us, they don't know how to react on that. And I was so surprised when I lost my mom. And I know that there are many people around me who are sincerely are willing to express their support, but I saw people, they are not even able, they don't know actually how to express the support, and very often happens in family. For example, if there is a divorce in a family or a loss of a very dear person, of a relative, if in a family someone is suffering sickness, very often in a society there exists a myth. You shouldn't talk about sick person, you shouldn't talk about something painful in order not to hurt even more. And I think it's the biggest lie, because of which we can actually stuck for a long time in our own loss and actually do not live it out. For many times I saw that in one family, after a loss, parents were not talking about it with their kids because it's just a kid and it will hurt him. Children were experiencing quite well at the same time pain of their parents. Or, for example, on a consultation, a mom was coming to me and she said, I got divorced with my husband, and the reason why she was in my cabinet, she was bringing her child with herself, who actually without any explanation started to behave in a different way, stopped to eat, stopped to study and learn, or had some speech problems, or closed in, or became very aggressive and uncontrollable. And I was asking, what happened in your family? It seems that nothing. Well, I got divorced from a husband, and I asked, so how your child reacted on that? Very often reply would be, it's okay, everything went well. Or whenever we would remember our childhood, when we lost someone or our parents would divorce, and it seems to us that, yeah, it's okay, I just don't remember my feelings. But this is not true. In fact, if we don't allow ourselves to speak with the closest people, that hurt that we are going through, those fears we are in, they don't disappear. In the end, they start to express themselves, sometimes in physical illnesses. And you know what is interesting? That sometimes when we lose very close people and we are experiencing a loss and we don't pay attention to it, that in a while we start to bring our hard and difficult emotions on other people in a situation that seems have no direct connection to the problem, and people don't understand what is happening with us because we don't understand very often what is happening with ourselves. And about this myth, it's very important today. I'd love to that one of those myths would be actually unmasked. Pain is pain, hurt is hurt, and you need to live it out. Very often I'm faced with the believers with such opinion, why you should grieve if you lost somebody. He's alive, he's in heaven. But then I have a question. If your relative is going to live somewhere for a year apart from you, and you know that you won't see him or her for a year, you will be missing him actually. And you admit that this separation or parting is not so easy for you. But if we understand that we are going to meet only in 10, 20 or even more years, it's actually important to admit that this huge period of life we're going to live without him or her. And physically, nobody on this earth will not submit. And if to speak about today's theme, it's very important to name your feelings, your experiences by their names. Only in this way we can deal with it in a healthy way. If to talk about let's say, I'll give a good author and a book that I can advise you to read to our listeners. Later on, we will post it on comments and we'll give you this information. It's one of the most popular and well-known authors of the books that are written in order to help people to deal with losses. Author is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Hard to remember, but still, we will give you later on a link. And it is about death and dying. And it's not, the book is not only about how to get over death of your dear person, but it's actually there are described phases that our soul is going through in every kind and type of loss. If we talk about these phases, she uses them, and many psychologists and consultants are using this knowledge that our soul is going through after a loss. So in sum, if we speak about these phases, the first one is when we for the first time find out, for example, about our diagnosis. When we close person to us is passing away, and somebody can say you need to be ready for that, but we never can be ready actually when a dear person lives and dies. So how can we identify this moment of being ready? It's impossible. Yes, we are separating with someone, and the first phase that we are facing in this, it is a denial. Somebody is also calling it it's a phase of shock. When it's not ready to deal with this pain. It's not actually perceiving it. What is interesting that every of these phases, each one can long in a different way. As psychologists say, it's commonly admitted that a norm to get over a loss is about a year till a year and a half. That could be named a normal living and going through the loss. But everyone actually has its own individual way. And I can say the way how we deal with crisis situations that are entering our lives when we are grown up, I think it depends a lot on how we're going and living and dealing with crisis, with first losses in our childhood. What kind of support was given to us from our parents? It's very important to understand. It depends a lot. It depends a lot. And it influences us in a mighty way. The way how we are dealing with our losses today. If we speak about denial and a shock, what is working there? Please, so that you can understand yourself and actually see how it happens. First of all, we can start to deny. No, it's impossible. Everything is good. It's impossible that I have a sickness. It's impossible that he left me. I don't want to deal with that. And as long as we are there, and for example, if it's a Christian society, everything is good, hallelujah. I don't need to live out, and we just don't allow ourselves to do it. One of the shock reactions can be when we don't evaluate it. It's not important. He wasn't such a good husband. I didn't need those relationships anyway. It's okay. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna deal with that. So when we are actually putting down our feelings, it's a shock. When we get over it and we name it as it is, yes, it happened, then this is the most painful moment. Our soul then moves forward to the second phase. We can call it as a phase of anger. It's very important to allow yourself to speak about it, to speak with your relatives, with friends, with consultants, with counselors. But please don't hold these emotions, painful emotions inside of you. And your anger can be expressed at everyone, at God. Angry with God, angry with yourself. Maybe I didn't ask for forgiveness. Maybe I didn't warn somebody. Maybe you can be angry with doctors that it happened because of them. It's very important to allow yourself to give an opportunity for yourself to share with the hurt. So the first tick would be, please don't stay alone. Don't isolate yourself with your own feelings. Please understand that it's normal. And when somebody is trying to evaluate your hurt and say, it's okay that you lost a child, you'll get pregnant again, it's okay, you'll have another children. I think in these moments for a woman that actually had experienced such a deep loss, it's kind of, laughing at her, or it doesn't care, don't worry, you'll have something else. It's very important to admit. And when we are going through this phase, then our soul is entering a third phase of bargaining. And we can draw a parallel. It's like Jesus in Gethsemane's garden, when Jesus didn't know till the end, do I need to go till the end of this way and path? So many emotions are there in this bargaining phase, and it seems to us, should I forgive? Should I let go and live further? But everything inside of us is yelling at us, no, screaming, how can I live further without him? How can I get over? How can I receive the fact that I'm sick? How can I forgive? How can I let go? And this third phase, in first two phases, you can get a help from psychologists, but the third phase will never be possible to get over without God. If you remember when Jesus was praying in that garden, and he said, Lord, Father, not my will but yours be done. It was so hard for him to make the choice. Then the next what is written in the Bible, then angels came to serve him. In this phase, what is helping for our soul to go through it, it's only God. When we are all alone and facing our own experience and our own grief, and it's hard to go through this phase. And when Jesus said, do you remember, Father, why you forsake me? And he tried and even asked his disciples, this is the phase where even Jesus tried to ask someone to help, and we are going alone through this phase. And it's so important to not harden your heart and go further. And it's important for you to understand, maybe somebody of you is understanding, this is where I am. And on a third phase, we actually can be keen on evaluating all the paths. For example, when we are going towards our forgiveness, sometimes we are entering again anger, pain, offense. And we can again go back to the third phase and keep bargaining. It looks like it's a regress, it's a way of coming back again. But it's important to understand where I am, to live it through and go further. So the hardest phase is the third phase, and sometimes person can be stuck there for years. We can be in this phase. Maybe people around you, or inside of you, you feel that I'm stuck somewhere. Somehow it's hard for me to start to live. Somehow in my feelings, in my thoughts, all the time, I'm just go back into anger, into my offense. And it's important to admit that our soul, only then our soul actually is somehow moving forward and going and entering fourth phase of when you experience a loss. It is a phase of grief. And sometimes when there is a death of a person happens, Sometimes there can be like total total muted feelings or even panic attacks. But what is a true grief is it is actually with the plus sign. This is the place where we actually we dealt with our feeling of guilt. We actually let go our grief and anger. And if it's a divorce, we have actually stopped being thinking what I haven't accomplished. And in this phase, we can also say that it is a consciousness. We consciously are looking at the path where we were, and we see where we were right and where we were wrong. We stop being angry. We're not yelling, what is it for? What is it for? But we actually start to understand the purpose and why I had to go this way. And I really enjoyed the thought that Veronica said that in the end, after those losses, there is a huge victory and a resource. And if we will look at strong people's lives, that we can see that no one of them became a really strong person without the path of losses. And the way how we were dealing with the crisis previously is the very same way how we will go or to the loss or to the victory in our losses. So on this fourth phase of grief, we understand and see how, as Jesus would say on the cross, please forgive them because they don't understand what they're doing. We perceive the situations in a total different way, and we start to see we start to see a purpose of all that horror that we went through. And in this place, our loss is becoming a resource, and we become able to bring help to somebody else, to serve and actually to receive, to share with the path we went through. And it sounds as a living word, as a healing word. And the last phase where our soul actually moves in the last stage, it is a stage of receiving, admitting, and forgiving. And in connection with our team, it is this last phase is a phase of victory. This is where we are able to forgive. And I can even say more, we're able to be grateful. We're able to say to God, thank you, that in some way, when it seems impossible, you led me through this way. We start to see what we gained in our heart and inside of us on this phase. On this phase, we actually are gaining back the part of ourselves that we lost during a loss, and we become truly whole. I believe that a person can find his wholeness and be healed only after he goes through his own way of losses. And this is how he gains himself back. Only through this path, and in the last stage, he finds himself mature, and we become grateful even to ourselves. And this is where we feel our depth, and we can be grateful even to our enemies and to those people who betrayed us, who took something away from us. We even can be grateful towards them. And I see there is not a lot of time for me. There will also be question and answer sessions. So the way as I could, in short, I told you about these 5 phases. This is the way how our soul is going through them. And I think that when you're listening to me now, and you can use these phases and analyze yourself and actually understand more at which stage you are now. And what I'd love to say more, when I was going through my loss at this day, it turns that my father also is dead. 8 years ago he died, and my mom died, and it looks like I have no relatives in Latvia. But it's interesting that it did not brought me a defeat. I cannot say that it wasn't painful, but inside of me, it gave me in a very new way. So I want to encourage you that when you are going through the stages, through your pain, inside of us, their enormous resources are opened up and totally new understanding that it was for a purpose. And what I wanted to add, we can both be stuck on some of the stages, but also go through them in a quick way. But to jump over and not to leave them out, it's impossible. God Himself wants to lead us through these stages. And when it seems that I don't have resources and strength, it's very important to find the resource in God, but actually to do not forget about people that are around us. I always try not to isolate myself when I'm grieving. I was attending my friends, I was telling what I was living through. Very often it seemed to me, especially when we are in difficult emotions and we see that there are people who are happy around. You've lost your husband, but there are weddings and people get married. You've lost a child, and if you didn't go through your emotions, you won't be happy when you will see that somebody else is having babies. It will cause inside of you your kind of anger. It will be hard for you to receive actually people who are happy at this moment, and it looks like at those moments you're all alone and your life has stopped. But it's important to understand that it's only our inner feelings, difficult feelings, that are trying to bring us in isolation. And very often it's not the people who isolate from us, but we ourselves isolate from people. So my encouragement to you would be that you would find strength and resources to don't close up, to do not isolate. Even at this conference now, you can ask your question. You can speak about what you're going through now. When we're sharing, it's one of the keys that actually is helping us to live through the pain. And it's important, if you have lost someone and you are in a family and you never talk to each other about it, it's very important. Grief and a loss, they can do both. They can unite everyone in a family, and a family can become even closer. It's like mutual grief, it unites you, but again, on the contrary, it can separate you. And I think you know yourself many examples when a family have lost their kid and they're divorcing because they did not talk about that pain, and that pain is not actually disappearing. They cannot be in closeness to each other, and it seems that this pain has actually separated them. And I know there are situations in Riga. We had this huge tragedy to everyone when our shopping center Maxima broke down. I was working with the people who experienced the loss there, and I found out that those people who were talking in their families about their loss, about their grief, they were quicker to get over their isolations and to get over the feelings. But also I had people who had taboo, who did not talk in their families, and for many years they were not talking about it, and they got separated from each other. And a person, adult person, came in a total isolation and find out that it's hard for him to build close relationships because it's too scary to do it. And only the first time when he started to speak about it, it was during the meeting with me. So, and this denial when he said, no, I just forgot about it, but it's a myth. Time only hurts you even more if you don't live out your emotions. Those emotions start to ruin some other spheres of our lives. That's why it's so important to not judge yourself and to allow yourself to live through it. And if everybody around you is talking to you like for how long you can be in your problem, but it's your grief and it's your responsibility how you will live it through. So it's important to talk about it, to talk about it with each other, and to do not isolate. I know it's scary, I know it's painful, but also I'd love to say from the point of view of those people next to those people who are experiencing the grief. Sometimes it's very scary. I know by myself, when I see that a person is going through some painful moments in life, it's scary somehow to express support. Tomorrow, there is a wonderful person, an expert, who is teaching us how to get over a loss. So there will be a group, about 18 people. We will be learning how, in a healthy way, to express support to your relative, to the person who has lost someone or is actually sick and is about to die. And later on, we will organize a telephone line where people can call and actually express their grief. But one of the moments, you shouldn't say some comforting words in those situations, because it will only irritate the person. It's important just to be with the person. I was lucky when my mom died and I had to there was a moment when my friends, they said, I will go to you, I will go with you to pick up the body of your mom. But I denied it, and I did not evaluate myself in the right way. I knew that it will be hard actually to go to the Ventspils, to go to the apartment where my mom lived, where she always was waiting for me. There was always warm and cozy, and it was hard for me actually to imagine how I will be entering her house and see no light in the windows, and my mom will not meet me and hug me. These emotions are very hard. Even now, while I talk about it, I just feel it somewhere inside of me, and I allow it to be. So I brought a friend of mine. It's so important to understand when we are so naked emotionally, so that there will be a right person next to us who would be able just to help me live through this grief. A friend of mine, she went with me, and I'm so grateful to her that while I was preparing for a funeral, when for the first time I entered that empty flat of my mom, when I faced this emptiness, that my friend, she wasn't teaching me how to live. She wasn't telling me that it's okay, your mom is in heaven, don't you suffer now. She wasn't de-evaluating my feelings. It's so important in these moments just to be next to the person. And when we are able, when we have this capability to be together and just share his or her pain, only when we went through this pain ourselves, then this carriage is not so hard for us. She was present. She was with me. She went to the funeral bureau. She was listening to my tears. When I, for a 10th time, I was going through my story, how my mom died, what kind of last words I heard from her, and what kind of feelings I had inside of me. It's so important at that moment just to be with a person, to have a wide heart, to have a kind heart that can just support you. And as an example, I finally could understand that person that went to Jesus while he was carrying his cross, and he didn't took away the cross. Sometimes we are trying to save a person, we're trying to take on ourselves the hurt of a person, but it's right when we're just coming closer and we are sharing that burden and giving our support. So you just need to give the support, sometimes in a silent mode, sometimes just within your eye look, sometimes when you find this appropriate word, let it be not a bunch of words but appropriate one. Just be ready to listen. If these are parents and kids, don't be afraid to come to your child and ask, what do you feel about that dad left us? What do you feel about that this sick person is sick? And you don't need to comfort a person if he has a cancer. I believe in a healing, but I also believe that it's important for a person to calm himself to the fact that he needs a healing, and to just ask person what he feels now, what he's going inside of his soul now. Only when we went through all the 5 stages, phases that I talk about, we're able to live our crises healthily, and we become able to live through pain of other people, and it brings us to the victory. Really liked one commentary that I heard from my teachers. It's Marilyn Murray, probably you heard about her. She also gives those 5 phases, stages. She's 85 years old, and she once said a phrase, do you know who is that victorious, happy person? It's the person who in the end of his or her way regrets nothing. I think this is my inner feeling, that all of us have, who went through all 5 phases, we regret nothing. And to those who are watching us and listening to us, ask yourself a question. If you have your calling of your life and what you are doing, and if you are successful in that, and it seems, where is it coming from? I just don't understand how everything works well in this. I can guarantee you, and you can comment, actually agree or disagree with that, that your calling was born out of your pain. Mostly, if you are serving to addicted people, probably you had your own addiction. If you are serving in healing, probably you had your own sickness. If you are a receiving person, you can be a receiving person in that area where that you actually lived through, and it's our choice. We can be stuck in there for years, or we can go through it healthily. Somebody can be stuck in for years, and maybe it will encourage you and will give you understanding why I need to go further, because in terms of the conference, it's too short actually to explain it to you. But very often on this path, it seems that everything is pointless, and feelings are so strong, and we think it's just pointless. I don't see any purpose that I actually had to go through the loss. It's the most difficult moments when everything seems to be done, it's finished, because inside of us, this is how we feel. And maybe I would love to encourage that no, I am deeply, deeply sure about it, that if our soul is living through the losses that it has to go through, it's only because we have some resources and powers to get over it. But when we are in aggression, when we are in the pain, when we refuse to get over it, when we isolate ourselves, we can't see this exit. And my deepest desire is so that somebody would get out of his or her isolation, that somebody would start to stop, to talk, and actually admit that, yes, in fact, it hurt me. Yes, in fact, I felt betrayed. Yes, in fact, I was having this and these feelings. This is what is giving inner resources to understand and see why it was for. And maybe somebody is just looking and searching for himself and is not understanding what he or she is living for. And here's a clue. Look at those hard periods that you had in your life or going through. Probably this is where an answer is. Your calling. Maybe someone is thinking, I got divorced, why is it for? I am a believer, I had my values that they're crushed, because whenever a family is ruined, also faith is ruined, and your values and beliefs are ruined. And it was the same with me. I prayed for my mom. God, why then my mom was saved? Why my mom went to the church in order to die in a very strange way, and being not so old? In this moment, everything seems to be without any point, without any purpose, and we start to get deep in these feelings, drowning in the depths of this hard and difficult emotions. But it's hard to get over it. And even feeling of emptiness also is a feeling that besides which are hidden many emotions. So, first of all, please don't isolate yourself. Keep talking about it. Sometimes we isolate ourselves even from God. Start to speak about your pain, about your anger, about your offenses to God. Start to talk with people that you trust. Please attend somebody who can give you professional help. Just don't stop. There is a big resource behind it. There is a victory. Thank you, Victoria. It's very valuable what you said. Partially, you start to answer the questions that are shown up in our commentaries. Natalia is asking, how can I get over the loss of my mother? I can't sleep. 2 years ago it was, but it feels like it was yesterday. Maybe there is another advice from you. But if a person is stuck in for 2 years and it looks like a clock has stopped in her life, in her house, and she can't sleep, and you can see that there are some expressions. And Natalia, please write down in what condition you are now. Maybe you saw yourself on some of the 5 stages, because sometimes we don't admit it. I don't admit that I don't have my mom anymore. How it can be expressed, for example, person with a loss is not getting rid of the stuff of lost person, or is not cleaning up the room where person used to live. It shows that it is a stage of denial, that we're not able to actually clean the house out of the stuff. For example, for myself, I cleaned my mom's flat, and I cleaned the flat. I took away all her things. I gave them away. And I remember a situation when I was in a small settlement in Ukraine. There was a woman, and we were in one house. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I heard herself speaking to a photo of her son in his room, where she was not taking away his things for 8 years. This is how a denial stage can look like. It's important to start to change something, even physically. Put away this stuff. Why you need those stuff? You will be remembering that person, and the memory of a person will for always stay in your heart. But it's important to get rid of physical things, to be not attached, to be distant from it. The second moment where we can be stuck in, I don't know where you are stuck in, but usually it's like, I haven't speak, I didn't tell this and that, maybe I should have asked for forgiveness, and every detail becomes very sharp, very bright, this feeling of unfinishedness. It's important to admit to yourself that you will never be at the stage where you could tell everything that you had to. And in fact, soul of your mother is alive, and nobody actually is telling you that you're not allowed to speak with that soul and ask for forgiveness. Maybe you were yelling when you met for the last time at her. Maybe you didn't make a soup, and I don't know, those moments, they are so deeply holding on us. So two things that are hindering us to let go: guilt that I didn't love enough that person, or being angry at person that he left you actually. Why you forsaken me? It's strange, but sometimes person can perceive death of close person to be as a condition of being thrown away, of being forsaken. I'm working very often with adults who, in their childhood, they have this emotion that mommy, daddy, why you did forsake me when you died? So you need to speak it out in order to move further. Natalie is writing me that my mom is, I see her in my dreams, I talk to her, then it's easier. I'm judging myself that I didn't I could come earlier and I could save her. Natalie, I understand, and it feels like you are guilty. You're judging yourself. And with my mom, I also was thinking that I didn't do enough. These moments are normal. You need to admit them, that they are there, but you shouldn't stuck in there. About your dreams, I understand. My mom, I had very often dreams with my mom, but it's important to acknowledge with what kind of emotional tone you are having the dream, with which emotions I see her in my dreams, and you need to understand what this emotion is, because the strongest feeling in your dreams, it's actually the feeling that I didn't live through. We talked already about the guilt. If it's anger, it helps you if you express it and you tell about it, but it seems that it's guilt. It's a guilt thing. Maybe it will help you in understanding that you can never be ready, and it's important to not blame yourself. Thank you, Victoria. Now we have another question. The question is, why many people very often are not keen and they don't want to talk about loss, although they are not in a denial stage, or is it still a denial stage? If they don't speak about it, you see, now maybe the picture will become clear to you. Sometimes in our head, we understand everything and we live through it, but it doesn't mean that we lived it in our emotions and in our heart. Sometimes these two parts are separate. Here are working in our mind all our protections that are helping to cope with. But here in our heart, this is our genuine emotions and our genuine truth. And sometimes because of our pain, we can distract from it with some other activities and forget about it, but still it will be raised up. If you can't talk about it, it's a sign that you did not live it through. A very famous Joyce Meyer, whenever she speaks, just think what she is talking about. She's talking about losing all her childhood and being sexually abused by her father, but you can feel in what way she speaks about it. There is no hurt, there is no shame, and there is no pain, and this is how she releases thousands of people. She brings down this atmosphere of freedom. But sometimes we see when a person starts to speak and it looks like he is over the loss, but there's so much pain, hurt, and tears are coming. It looks like it still hurts. But if I can't to talk about it at all, it means that I'm so afraid actually to touch upon these feelings. Or sometimes it seems to us that it's too hard it's a too big burden for other people. Why should I put my pain on them? And that's why it's also hard for us to speak about it. Very often these are the reasons. But mostly it's, yes, probably the person didn't live it through. Another question. You talk that emptiness is also a feeling and it's very important to live it through. You also had an emptiness because of losing your mother. What was your decision that you made? And did you make a decision at all to what you were feeling with this emptiness? Can we leave it as it is? What is your personal experience and what are your recommendations? Yes, I faced this emptiness myself. And it's so important to explain to yourself that it's okay. For some time, you don't need to suffer this emptiness. You just can live in it. But the most important, don't run away, because it's much easier to escape from it, as I was doing it, because it's impossibly hard to face it. This feeling of emptiness is most difficult feeling. It's hard to get over it. This is the inner feeling of loneliness inside of you. It's much easier for me to get lots of appointments and start to do my work, or somebody else can get in his activity and become workaholic or alcoholic, or in some other ways escape from it or fill it with some trash. But I wish you to find this courage to face it and to live it, to do not run from it, and ask the question, what is behind my emptiness? What is happening with me inside of it? I would say it's the most unbearable feeling through which, if we live it through together with God, when we are in that emptiness, sometimes we stop feeling even God, that He is with us. It looks like, it feels like we're all alone in all the universe. So what saved me? Just knowledge that God is and He did not forsake me. It was just a knowledge of a truth. I didn't feel myself that way. It was total emptiness. I didn't feel His love, and it felt like the universe is empty and I am empty. I could recommend you that please don't escape from it. The quicker you meet it and face it, the quicker you will get out of it. But I also would encourage you that when we are going through the emptiness and pressure, we will come out of it totally different people. I catch myself on a thought that I have totally different inner feelings and understanding of God. It looks like the whole spheres and layers, totally new layers and revelations from about God, about myself. In this emptiness we find ourselves. If to summarize up, that behind the strongest and most difficult feelings, the biggest resources are behind it. But it's important to be not afraid to live these emotions together with God, to do not deny it, to be honest that it hurts. Yes, I'm empty now, if we're talking about this feeling. Yes, thank you so much. Emptiness is okay. Yes, it's what is important to admit that it's okay. There is a place for emptiness. There are moments, as you said, you just need to base yourself on a decision. And yes, just a second. When you are in this emptiness or in these hard feelings, it seems that they will not finish at all. And as a savior was for me acknowledgement that it's only temporary. Yes, this is not how I feel it now, but I know that it is not for eternal. It will end up. Yes, it is just another stage of a healing. You say the precious thing, and I think it's a good quote that you can put on your wall. You say that person finds his wholeness only after when he goes through his path of brokenness, and during this path he reunites with himself and he finds himself to be more mature. And I think as for Christians and for everyone, after these questions, what is it for, why, when you're drowned in your grief, when we allow this thought that it's on purpose and something precious can be drawn out of it, it helps to live it through. Another question. In order to check yourself, to what degree a man can trust his or her emotions, and to what degree he or she should hold on decisions while going through the loss. Personally, I was faced with this situation and I was analyzing myself. From one hand, there are emotions that you need to live through healthily. On the other hand, it's a depth of emotion where you can drown. And and during bargaining stage, you need to make some decisions. So how can I know? How can I analyze myself according to emotions? If I feel everything is fine, then I'm healed. So where is the balance? Where I can trust myself, or where I just need to make a decision and go further? Yes, there are two marginal things. First marginal view would be when a person is not allowing himself just to admit and live through emotions. Everything is fine, I'm strong, and he's not paying any attention to the feeling. Sooner or later it will come out. And there is another marginal view that a person is totally drowned in a grief and it's too long, it's too much, and person can't get out of it. And again, as I said, it's very important to be honest with yourself and to say to yourself in what kind of feelings I'm stuck in. What is it about? And as you said, can I trust my emotions and feelings? Well, then whom can you trust if it's not you? I understand that our rock is God and His promises, and this is what helps us to do not drown inside of our feelings, but your inner truth where you actually are, only your soul can say. Your soul. So it's important to be honest with your soul, to talk with your soul, as David was talking about fears and many other things. And after, when he was pouring out his heart in psalms, every psalm ended up with the victory and joy, and he was gaining again this base in God. So it's important to trust yourself in order to understand to what level, degree I am healed. I think it's about intensity. For example, in the beginning, I was totally, when I went out of this denial, for me, usually in a denial, my reaction is like my cold mind is working. I'm starting to organize many things. I'm even trying to comfort others, but I'm not dealing with my emotions. But when my emotions met me, it was hard for me to experience this loss. It was hard for me actually to deal with it. But then I started to understand. So it was like half year after a loss, I was analyzing myself, how healthy I was living it. After half of the year, I understood that, yeah, I have these strong waves of hard emotions, of grief, of loss, but I am capable to deal with them. It's not so intense anymore, and they're not so often anymore. And because I was working on that, I was crying it out together with psychologists, with counselors, with God, with mom. I was doing as much as I could in order to do it healthily. Today, I can say that this grief, this missing a person, went away a month ago. So I'm paying attention to my soul, to my emotions, and I'm glad that this blanket of grief, of loss, of missing someone, that it wasn't for a while with me. And when hard feelings, you're going through them, how you can say that you actually coped with them, dealt with them. For example, now when I'm coming home and I'm all alone there, it's more or less comfortable for me. When I think about my mom, it's more about joy and understanding that she's in heaven. It's not only knowledge in my mind, but it's actually my inner feeling where I feel she is. Dreams, I stopped dreaming, having dreams about her. So I'm paying attention to myself, and I see that these emotions are not so strong anymore, and they are very rare. Then I have this ability actually to rebuild my life. For example, if it's a divorce, only when you went through these stages, only then a person is ready to start building new relationships. If he or she didn't get over it, I guarantee you that the feelings will show themselves in next relationships towards the person that is not guilty at it. So you need to understand, it's important to understand that you don't have any offense, any anger, any grief, and then you can start new ones and with gratitude towards past relationships. If it's a loss, then I understand that I have ability to understand that I will not have parents anymore. I will always be missing them because these are the closest people for me. But you need to reorganize somehow your life, and you need to find this this basement, this rock inside of you. You need to rebuild your life, and you understand that you can't call them anymore. So you are finding another one, people that you will be building relationships valuable for you. After the healing, after you went through your feelings, ability comes to build your life or bring into your life something new. And it's the very same with the loss of a child. It's the most terrible loss. It's a strong loss when you lost your parents, but as my mom said, if you lost a child, it's the biggest tragedy. Because with this feeling, it's important to admit, person will always be living with that. But of course, this knowledge helps that this child is present, and you can find some purpose in it. Just for a second, an example, we have very famous organization, non-charity organization. The couple, something there was wrong with diagnosis, so how they went through the loss. When they forgave those doctors, when they got through anger, they created a fund. And today there are thousands of children, and they have hospice and place where they help to others to diagnose in the right way children. So it became the work of their life. And when I knew one woman, she works in a drug addicted dispenser place where they are in a very bad condition. I helped there, and when I saw how this woman loves every drug addicted who comes there, like in a very bad shape, and she treats them, every one of them, with such love, I asked her, how is it possible for you to be so patient and so loving kind towards them? And she says, Victoria, I see in every one of them my son who went away because of that. So in order to understand how to analyze yourself, I will not forget that person I've lost, but in your soul it's echoing with no anger and no offense, but with something warm and bright. And I believe when you will be sharing your story, I haven't heard it fully, but I feel in this atmosphere why I was so eager to join this conference and take part in it, that in this, what is happening here, these are consequences of how you were going through your loss. It's a resource, and it's bringing help to other people. So when we are living through our hard emotions, ability comes in to rebuild your life, to be of good help for somebody else. So its criteria would be when you proceed to live, you don't exist, you're not stuck in, no, yeah, you don't survive, you don't isolate, you're not in a depression, you're not in offense. Yes, you feel that colors of life are back, and you understand that you're living. Yes, and the next speaker probably is a real testimony of that pain can become a resource. So our dear listeners, please join us and comment if it's valuable that you heard now. And people, they do agree with you, and there are good responses. Please be with us, support us now, and we will be serving you. Vika, well, we have this time. I want to ask you a question. Is there a difference between, I think it is, but as a psychologist, please say, is there a difference between how men and women get over the loss? Because for women it's easier, it's more acceptable, so that a woman would cry. But what about a man? Because he is also a father, a husband. It's so good that you asked this question. I was thinking to tell about it and forgot about it, but it looks like You're reading my mind. This is what is connected, what I was speaking in the beginning, is that in a society there are some bans. It's a banned for a man to express the feeling, like from a childhood, boys shouldn't cry. Maybe that's why men, they actually die because of heart attacks and heart diseases, because all their emotions, it's normal for them to suppress under their strength. And I think it's the major banning issue that is not allowing to get over their loss. But real and strong men, they do cry. And it's healthy to cry, because I'm always saying soul, it has no gender. It's not women, feminine or male. Soul has a body that walks in a man or a woman, but soul is the same, and it goes through the loss in the very same way. So it's important to express your feeling. If we look at the Christ, I'm sorry, but he was crying also in this, in the way that he was sweating with the blood, taking into consideration that he was a man and he was a God. He expressed his feelings strongly. And in old times, and even somewhere these traditions are present, there were people crying, people who helped people to release their feelings and emotions, and it wasn't for nothing. So it's much harder for men to express their feelings, especially if a man is head of a family, and it feels like, if I'm gonna relax now, who's gonna save the situation? And I have to be strong. But it's not about strongness. When real losses and feelings are there, it's important so that husband and wife can talk about it, and they can speak to each other and express what they feel towards each other. And if it's needed, to cry together, as is written in the Bible, grieve with those who grieve. And that's the best therapy that God himself commanded us to do, so that we would be able to cry with people who are crying. And for men, it's much more difficult, but it's but it's important to allow yourself to live these emotions. I'm always laughing. If a man comes for a visit, it's a guarantee that he is in such a bad shape and condition that draw him to the end point that he needs to go and show up his vulnerability. It's so difficult. It's such a ban in a society, but bans, they don't work. Grief is not separating men and women. There is one soul, the same soul, and it's important to live these emotions. So whenever it hurts you, please, man, cry. I believe that a loving wife will be always appreciating it, and she will be able to receive it and perceive it as something wonderful and precious. As Apostle Paul said, I am strong when I'm weak. So it's important to allow yourself. Sometimes it seems that when I admit my weakness, then somebody will stop loving me and respecting me as a strong person. But in reality, your vulnerability will make you more close to your folks and relatives. Thank you for your answer. You also said a phrase that when you see that time has passed, is there an understanding that it is a normal period of how much or how long you should grieve? As I said previously, commonly it is perceived that the average period of grief is about year and a half, when all these stages should end. But I think that with every person it's very individual. Who can put you in a frame and say how much you should grieve? I think it depends on the size of your loss, and there is a difference to, for example, death of a very close person or a child, or, for example, some other kind of a loss. I think there is a difference to lose money or to lose your health. I think it depends, first of all, on the size of a loss, and second, as I said, how we've been dealing and coping with our losses before, how our soul got used to get over the losses from our childhood. For example, in a childhood, I lost my cat. And if my mom says, "Why are you crying? You're gonna have a new cat," and it is something not of big importance. So when I grow up, I will be thinking that nobody actually evaluates my pain, and I will be hiding it and be stuck in it. So it's important how you've been doing this previously. And one of the person that is going to lead a seminar tomorrow, he said, and he's working with people who are going to die soon, and and who are diagnosed with strong and serious sicknesses. I believe in healing, but not everyone is getting healed, and sometimes person is going through this plus their relatives. And I'm asking, how are you facing it? How a person can be ready actually to finish the life and enter into eternity? And he said, how can a person actually be ready? You can be ready to the degree, and you can be ready according to your experience that you had before that. So if we take it globally on this theme and topic of loss, the way how we are dealing with divorces and losses in our life, and if our soul is living through all these 5 stages, then this experience actually prepares us to leave this earth in forgiveness, in thankfulness, not being stuck in pain in the end of our days. We know many people who are facing their sicknesses. Many different things are arising out of them. One close friend of mine, 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with a cancer, and I was together with her while she was going through it. I was admired. She's a person, she's a believer, but she was going and learning how to cope with her losses previously. So her cancer, she went through it so good, and now she is in a remission, she is healed, she went through all of this path. But very often out of us there are totally different feelings are arised, and we shouldn't blame us for it. There is no border actually, which is bad or which is good, but it's important to be honest inside of you and to understand whether I'm stuck or not, and you should proceed further. You should evaluate yourself, your inner being, not actually the time. Indeed, the healing path is individual. You need to receive yourself, you need to be patient with yourself. And I believe that this topic and the knowledge that Viktorija was sharing today with you will help to understand you. Can you cope with it and deal with it yourself, or you need a help of your relatives or even a professional? And Viktorija today is ready actually to give you a free consultation for your questions. There were not many questions, but I believe these were deep questions. So, who is the one you'd love to give your consultation? I'm not surprised there were not many questions, because it's strange when you hear such a hard topic and you have many questions. Only after a while you will have some insights, so please write them down in commentaries. And if I will open up now, yes, there was Natalia. She was asking a very honest question. So let it be Natalia Kante. How I can get over death of my mother. Natalia Kante, I think I will be very useful for you as never
Наталья
before.
Канте, я вам
That's why
сейчас буду
please,
полезна как никогда, поэтому
moderators and hosts
тогда
will
как-то
unite
нас уже,
us,
да, модераторы
and we
свяжут,
will get in touch with you,
да,
and
друг
we
с
will
другом, и мы с вами тогда
set an
договоримся, когда у меня
appointment,
будет ближайшее время свободное,
and
я с удовольствием
gladly I will do it if you
запишу
want
на
it. And
консультацию,
I
если вы
think
этого
that
хотите,
I will
и,
be able to help you
наверное,
in
более
detail
так подробно
to deal with
помогу
this
вам в
question.
этом
Thank you,
вопросе
Victoria.
разобраться.
Да, большое спасибо, Виктория. Хорошо.
There is a
У
person
нас
who will be
есть
receiving a wonderful gift,
человек,
an
который
opportunity
получит
to
прекрасный
have a
подарок,
consultation
прекрасную
with you.
возможность.
Thank you so
Виктория,
much
спасибо
for
тебе большое,
being
потому
so
что ты
open
откликнулась. Вот я
and
честно
participating
верю и
at this
понимаю,
conference. I
что в
believe
этом
God
Бог,
is in it
в этой
at this
связи, в
conference,
этой
in
конференции,
our
в нашей
friendship.
дружбе, в этом всем есть Бог, и Он
Yes,
прославляется.
such an uneasy topic
Ой,
you've
ну вот
chose.
непростую ты
And I
тему
think
задала,
this
и
this
я думаю,
topic and the
что вот
name,
это
it will be
само
really speaking
название, оно
from
будет
loss
тоже очень
to
говорящим,
victory.
то есть от
I believe
потери
that
к
today's
победе.
atmosphere,
Я думаю, что по
we've
атмосфере
started
начали мы
with
с
a very
такого
difficult topic.
непростой такой
I
темы про
believe
потерю
our
с
listeners,
достаточно сложными,
visitors
я
of the
думаю,
conference, they have very
слушателями
difficult
чувствами,
emotions now,
то
but
есть
I
от
believe through
потери.
the
И
testimonies,
дальше все будет
through
через
personal
свидетельство,
stories.
через тем, что
I
они
know some of the
делятся своим
speakers, they will
личным,
be talking
глубинным,
about
я знаю, спикеров,
their
что
experience
вы
that they've
пережили
been
в своей
through. I believe
жизни,
that
что вы с
tomorrow,
глубинным
we,
опытом.
all of
Я
us,
верю,
we
что
will be
завтра
in
реально
this
все мы придем к
full
победе,
feeling
к
of this
полному чувству,
inner
ощущению
victory. I'll
и
be together with
внутреннему вот
you,
этой
and
победы.
tomorrow
Поэтому
I'll
буду с
be at
вами
studies, but I
сегодня,
will
завтра вот у
be
меня
watching all
обучение,
the
но потом
videos. So thank you so
пересмотрю
much for your
обязательно.
trust.
И спасибо еще
Thank
раз
you for
огромное за
organizing
доверие,
this
спасибо
platform.
за то, что вы организовали это
Thanks to
пространство,
everyone who
спасибо
was
за
with us, and thanks to
всем,
everyone
кто
who
были с нами,
organized it.
спасибо
May
всем, кто
God
это вообще
bless
организовал и устроил.
this
И вам
proceeding.
благословенного продолжения
Thank you so
сегодняшнего дня.
much. Dear ones, we are with you. We'll be
Большое
holding you to your
спасибо.
hand
Дорогие, мы с
in
вами.
spirit. So
Мы вас
let's go
ведем за
together
руку, я верю,
further.
духовно.
Thank you
Пойдемте
so much,
вместе до
Victoria.
победы. Пойдемте вместе. Спасибо большое, Виктория.